Some of you were present for the elementary meeting that took place on Thursday night. And just to set you up with some sense of how long we might spend together, we went 2 hours and 10 minutes on Thursday. Probably had questions or comments from somewhere up around 30 to 35 individuals. So we will try to keep things moving as we go through this process this evening. So I want to introduce myself. If you don't know me, I'm Brian Dolan. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Dixon. It's my, I'm just about my anniversary of finishing 9 years. I've started my 23rd year here working in Dixon. So I'm all in, I think I would tell you. And we want to also let you know that presenting tonight also will be Mark Monticello, who is our technology guy, who a few months ago also got to carry the title of maintenance and operations manager. So Mark is doing all of our safety planning. And then also have Nick Giramonti on hand. Nick is the assistant superintendent for Ed Services. So Nick will talk a little bit about the potential models that we're going to look at as we go through both tonight and the decision-making process which the board will undergo on Thursday. So hopefully you are reading what I write. Things are getting emailed to you as long as you have an email address in ABI and our ARIES. And if you don't, get one in there, please. And then they're going out on Facebook and they're on the website as well. And some weeks may have a little bit more specific content to them than others as things develop and change. So we'll touch on a lot of the elements of what you've been reading there, but I want to just try to establish a little bit of a frame for tonight, I guess I'll call it that, to make sure that you understand really where we are at the moment in terms of this process and where you folks fit into this, and which is right in the center of it, and then what's going to happen on Thursday night. Okay, so first thing I want to tell you is there's no decision been made about what our reopening is going to look like. That won't happen until Thursday night when the governing board hears our final presentation, hears from public, whether it's parents or students or staff members. We've been hearing from parents and staff members a lot, really haven't had a lot of conversation yet that students were a part of, and we welcome them into it as well. What you'll see, I think, on Thursday is after staff makes its presentations and public comment is finished, the board is in essence going to have a buffet table of things to choose from. We won't be making a recommendation to them. The board will, after hearing everything that they have heard over these last several months, and on Thursday night, I won't belabor it tonight, I'll talk about the process that we've gone through, including the board members' participation. But if you, I left, I'll put it this way, I left work Friday afternoon feeling pretty much one way about what was going to happen here. And by midday today, well, I drove into work thinking, oh, this might be different now. And by midday today, after the governor had spoken, I had a whole nother set of facts to think about. Things are changing so rapidly. And as such, what we decide on Thursday is probably going to be different than what we might have decided today. And I'll also tell you that it's not anything carved in stone. I've been keeping this high-tech countdown to the first day of school. The first day of school is August 10th. So here's my high-tech countdown. And here at this point of the day, it has the number 19 written on it. Not counting today. So after today, there's 19 work days until school starts, 19 weekdays, which is a very, very short amount of time. And if we go backwards 19 days, and think about where we were then, I don't know that we would have anticipated we'd be facing kind of the questions and dynamics around the virus and reopening that we are dealing with today. You are seeing districts across the state and country wrestling with and finally making their decisions about what to do. And in some districts, decisions had been made several weeks ago, and now those are being unmade. And I just want to make sure that you understand that whatever decision is made by our board on Thursday could be unmade, could be revised, could be changed. I don't think if any of us have been paying attention, we know that the shifts in the circumstances have just been constant and at times pretty extreme. I sit in a weekly meeting with the other superintendents and charter directors in the county and Solano County Public Health. And one of the things Dr. Mateus emphasized a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago probably, was that scientifically, if you just go the hard science, there's no way to eliminate all the risk posed by the virus. I suppose if you put yourself into a NASA type facility with the most extreme equipment and everything else, that might be possible, right? One of those absolute clean rooms. But in terms of us doing our business out in public in this state, in this county, there's no way to eliminate all the risk. It's an impossible task. So what do we have to do? We have to work to reduce the risk, mitigate the risk, minimize the risk, whatever you want to call it, to a level that we can accept. On one hand, that sounds like, oh, that's not such a great thing to approach this. But of course, we assume risk all day long, every day, right? Every time I get my truck to drive somewhere, I am embracing some risk that something could happen. Every time I go and eat something from a place that I didn't grow in my backyard or something like that, even though there you can still have the problem, we assume some risk. So that risk is always out there, and we want, obviously, especially when we're talking about the lives of our children and staff and families, to minimize that to the ultimate lowest level that we can. What we've been saying in our documents out and through our meetings all since the spring is, safety has to be the first consideration that we make. The definition of safety varies from person to person. Quite honestly, from public health agency to public health agency, it also varies. We see discrepancies between guidance and recommendations there. And that safety issue applies to our students, it applies to our staff as well. And then we know that it applies to our families as well. If kids are coming back and forth to school, or staff are coming back and forth from home to school, then that's obviously a different situation than if everybody is housed up in a shelter in place or a quarantine type element. Second primary responsibility we have is about learning. And this has not been a good, it's not been a happy story. It's not been a good deal for kids in terms of learning. We all know that. People worked very hard to provide the best that they could in the distance learning model. And the fact of the matter is, and I wrote about this early on, in the space of just a couple of days, we threw out 150 or so year old model of what education looked like. Kids go to school, they work with each other and a teacher, and we went to this thing called distance learning. One of our teachers in a board meeting a few weeks ago gave us a label that we've been using, and really what we went into was crisis learning, right? And we know that if we're back with any element of distance learning, which we believe we will be for a variety of reasons that we'll talk about tonight, some degree of it, that it has to be improved from what we did last school year, and Nick will talk about that. We were very worried about our kids and staff's mental health and social emotional well-being. We know that this has been very difficult on them. For some kiddos, they've managed, and whatever the dynamic is at home or in the neighborhood, things of that nature, they've done okay. I've also had plenty of conversations with families where kids have not done okay. And again, regardless of what model we're in, we know that we have to address the social, emotional elements here. And finally, families need our support. You know, what happened in March was really hard on families. And again, some families managed. You know, if my kids were not 24 and 26 and both UC Davis graduates and off having productive, happy lives, the Dolans would have managed school closure and distance learning just fine. You know, no needs of any kind for our household or for those children. And that we can't say that of every child in Dixon by any means. And so as we go through this, we're trying to keep a focus on equity and meeting the needs of all students. But that equity idea means that all students don't have the same needs. And so we have to address the issues for those kids, but also for their families, where helping just isn't possible because of work schedules or language or other issues in the home that may prevent a parent from being able to be as supportive as say my wife and I could have been. So we've got these huge student needs, and we've got these huge family needs, and we've got these huge staff needs, and we have to meet requirements and regulations and all those types of things. And the one given is that it's impossible to accommodate what everybody wants, and that whatever decision the board makes, or decisions the board makes on Thursday night, there's going to be plenty of people who disagree with what happens. We know that. We've surveyed parents. We've got some survey information from staff. We meet with our labor groups. We had our first parent night on Thursday. We're going to hear from you again tonight. We know whatever we do, there will be widespread disagreement with it. My call to all of us is to not let the disagreement become division. And God knows we have a society full of all kinds of different divisions today, and I'm not assigning responsibility anywhere. It's just a fact, right? We know that it's the case. And if we're going to be successful in our work here with our kids and with you folks, the division has to just be put aside. We just have to come together and say, okay, I don't love this, but I'm going to do it. It's a time for us to lead our kids by our examples. It's a time for us to try to put aside differences as they may exist. Our kids will struggle more if we're squabbling. Our kids will struggle more if they don't believe that we're working together. Our kids will struggle more if we're not supporting each other the way that in ways that we've never had to do it before. We had some successes with that from March on. We also had a ton of room to grow in it, right? All of us have that room. So part of what I'm going to be asking for over the next several days, and the board certainly is in agreement with me on this, is for everybody to keep breathing, and everybody to remember that everybody, there's nobody in the midst of this process who's trying to do a bad job, who's trying to hurt kids, who is trying to do anything other than what they think is right and best. And we can't get personal. We can't get nasty. We have to be good. These days are, I mean, it's just unreal, really. And we got to be good to each other. And we can. It is the nice thing. We know that we can do that. I've seen plenty of evidence of that in this community as we've had challenges. And those challenges have largely been in response to tragedies and things like this, things like that. You could label what's happened here as a large tragedy in terms of the lives of our kids and what our staff members have experienced and what's going on for families as well. But the idea that we respond positively, to me, is just it's really our ethical, moral responsibility, and I hope that we'll all be able to meet that. I'll tell you that we had a lot of input on Thursday night, and it was wonderfully civil and productive and constructive and positively framed. And so we hope we can do the same thing tonight. I'm going to shut up in a moment and get to just sharing a couple of slides and then moving on. Just want to tell you how this works tonight. So I'll do a little bit, Nick will present a little bit, and then Mark will do his thing. I also have Kim Parrott is in the meeting. Kim is our Director of Special Education. And I think Adrienne Lauder might be in the meeting. She's our Director of Pupil Services as well. Those folks were going to try to join us. I have not looked. Wow, we're up to 236 in attendance tonight. So that's great. You guys blew away the elementary ranks here. So under participants, if you click on participants, it gives you the whole big old list of all 235 of us. And down in the right-hand bottom corner, there's a little button that says raise hand. And if you click on that button, you get in queue. So somebody by the name of Savannah clicked on that and then unclicked on that. So you can unclick if you decide you don't want to speak or ask a question. So that's how we're going to get you in line to ask your questions or to make your comments, right? And Mark Monticello, who's running that part of the meeting, he will just work down the list. You can keep that participant tab open, and then you can see as you're getting close, and Mark will call your name. We do want to ask that in the interest of hearing from everybody, you don't get back in line to ask something until everybody else has exhausted their questions or comments. There are a lot of you in this meeting tonight. So take one shot at it. Want to make sure that you also try to keep things concise, because I imagine tonight we've got 50 or more people probably who would like to get into this with something to say. If somebody has said exactly what you were thinking, you can get on and say, I agree entirely with Brian. He nailed it. Thanks for letting me put my 2 cents in, okay? There's 1 or 2 board members who are in this meeting, at least listening and watching. The part of what will happen out of these meetings is we'll carry the thoughts and questions and comments from you into the meeting, and that's not a line-by-line accounting by any means, but we're doing this to be able to convey information into the board. So use that under the participant tab, that raise hand button. That'll get you in line, okay? And I think what we would like to do is have Nick and Mark join me after we're all 3 of us done. Then we'll get to answering your questions or taking your comment, okay? Last thing about questions and comments, we don't have time to be able to have crosstalk or debate between any of you, and you'll see that I try not to, and Nick and Mark won't either try to get into debate either. Ask the question, make the comment. We're not going to try to, I say this, and so Mark says that, and then I respond this. So we want to just try to keep it constructive and moving forward. Like I say, there are a lot of you out of there, okay? So I'm going to try to, Mark, if you will let me share my screen, please.
Should be ready.
Thank you, sir. And I'm going to show you just a few little slides here.
We do have a question right off the bat. Should we?
Is that is that a content question or a process question, I guess?
I can't tell.
All right. Well, let's hold on to it
Okay.
if we can, then. Thanks, Mark. All right. Okay, here we go. All right. So want to give you a little bit of background. We've been meeting with the board every 2 weeks throughout closure. And right now it seems like we're on a weekly basis almost. They have been more involved in this whole process than I think they ever anticipated that they might be. I'll talk about that more Thursday. Subcommittee meetings here with members of the admin team. the board meetings, just a ton of engagement that they have done as part of their responsibility to get ready for that decision. We offered a survey closed on July 1st. We had 944 parents or guardians participate, and that represented about 13 or 1,400 students. That's old news at this point in time, is how we view it. We shared those results at a board meeting, I think on July 2nd. And at that point, they were even, the information was a little stale. It had been open for about a week and a half. And we certainly know if we surveyed again right now, that we'd probably see different results than what we saw back in that later part of June into early July. So this is a much less formal setting than a board meeting here, right? We're trying to give you guys the opportunity to have a say and to get some things clarified. And this went out last week, and I already said this, but tonight's discussion does become part of our process on Thursday night as well. So we had 4 primary takeaways from the survey results. And these are not dramatically different from what I've heard from colleagues in other districts, right? So 73% of folks at that point in time said they wanted to have a physical return as part of the reopening. And whether that was a full-time return or in the blended or hybrid model, where that model, and Nick will talk about that some more, that's a mix of some in-person learning and some distance learning. So about 7 out of 10 respondents said, I want to have my child back on campus to some degree. We also know, and some of you may be able to get off the meeting after you hear this, there will be a distance learning option available for any family that does not want to have their child, or the child cannot make a physical return to school, right? So even if we said on Thursday night that we're doing a full-blown, wide-open return to school with no restrictions, we know that that would not work for families, and that those families have the opportunity to opt in to a distance learning program. So even if there's a physical return to school determined on Thursday night, families will have the option to do distance learning only. Okay, I know that was a big question for families on Thursday, and I think it's probably a big question again tonight. We know that families are going to need real specific information on what we're doing in terms of health and safety protocols. And Mark will share some of those tonight. And then really they get finalized based on what exact model that we'll be adopting on Thursday. But I can assure you that Mark and the rest of us have been working on the safety things extensively already. And then the final point relates back to something I said before. Things are going to change, you know, and right now we've got more cases in our area, and that seems to be ebbing and flowing perhaps a little bit. I didn't see today's numbers, so I don't know what they are, but we do know that we've had a spike in Solano County overall. We do know that we've had a spike in Dixon as well. So we'll take those into account. We're operating under Senate Bill 98, which was a law passed in addition to the state budget back in the second half of June. And that law does require a physical reopening of schools. And here's the exact language from the bill: to the greatest extent possible. Now, everybody needs to know that the greatest extent possible is not defined anywhere. Our primary guidance comes from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, because that's where California Public Health and Solano County Public Health are driving off of those CDC guidelines. Like I said, I'm in a weekly meeting with Solano County Public Health getting the updates. Under SB 98, distance learning is allowed in 2 conditions. One is if we go district-wide or school-wide on an order or guidance, you know, it'd much more likely be guidance of a state or local public health officer. When we closed in March, that was not based on an order from any public health agency anywhere. It was a local decision based on guidance that came. So we were not forced to close at that time. The second avenue for distance learning is, as I mentioned before, if a family has a child for whom being in school is not the appropriate thing. And that's not anything that we are going to be verifying anything of those natures. If a family requests distance learning, saying it's their preference, end of story. There's no debating it. There's no investigations on our part. So distance learning has some new requirements for it. I mean, you think about it, mid-March, there was no previous experience with distance learning for all students. So a couple of them that are most notable. So all students, we have to be able to verify that they've got a device and connectivity. And we made great strides with getting devices out, and it was slower with connectivity. We do have little hotspots that went out to a number of our families, and there's still more here, and we'll obtain more if we need. Grade level aligned instruction. There's no pass on the standards that are being taught. They have to be aligned to the grade level that students are in. There has to be support for students with disabilities, the English learners, students with 504s, homeless youth. Our mental health supports continue to have to be provided and all. And the other piece that is new is a daily live interaction with teachers and peers, whether in person or via electronic means. We know that was one of the challenges for families and students, was not having daily contact with an instructor. What that will look like can vary an awful lot, but again, Nick will share with you some of the models and some of the things we're working on there. A couple other things. The minimum requirements for instructional time will be enforced, and if districts don't meet them, there will be financial penalties. Those minimum requirements say that a student has to have 4 hours of instruction on a daily basis as the minimum. Now, of course, our regular school day in secondary is significantly longer than 4 hours of instruction. And just because of the nature of these times and people potentially doing these blended models or distance learning, the idea is to, with that combination of in-person or face-to-face time plus independent work by students, have that amount of 4 hours per day. And finally, for me, there's daily attendance requirements. It was, kind of come if you want, while major efforts were made by staff to try to track students down and get them to participate. Many didn't, and for a variety of reasons. In the new model, if we're in distance learning to any degree, then daily requirement for attendance continues, and the sites will be required to do attendance intervention steps should students fail to attend on a daily basis. So those are things which make life different from what happened previously. And I'm going to ask Nick to take over now and talk a little bit about the models that the kind of models. We're not going to tear into all of them specifically here, but the kinds of things that we are working on as potential options and ideas for the board to consider on Thursday night. Mr. Giramonte.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here if I could. So some of you, I've done a presentation similar to this in the past. So if this, some of you who think you've seen this already, unless you were at our elementary meeting last week, you haven't, even if it does look kind of similar to something I presented at a recent board meeting. So what I'm going to do tonight is really just sort of talk generally through what our different models might look like depending on what the board decides on Thursday, and just ask a couple of questions as well of you all to consider as you give your comments. But really, I think just to sort of clarify kind of where our thinking is at this point. I'm not going to dig into the models tonight. That will be Thursday night. That would we want to hear from you guys tonight, and that frankly would take a really, really long time for us to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more what we're thinking about with secondary there as well. So first, I just want to point out what these different columns mean. So we have 1, 2A, 2B, 3, and 4. And I'm going to actually work backwards here and start with 4 and 3. So 4 and 3 are really, the blue and the green are kids can come back to school. We fully open. 4 is completely normal, like COVID never happened. Green is school kids are back, but with some restrictions. And I'll talk about what those are when I get to that. Then we get to 2B and 2A, and those are what's referred to commonly as the hybrid or limited model. We're tending to use the hybrid return model, and that's where a certain percentage of a school population can be back on a campus at a given time to ensure for things like social distancing, et cetera. Then that red column is what we call distance learning 2.0. That is because of the health situation, we're not able to bring students or back to campus for their learning. I think I speak for everybody that we all wish we were in the blue column right now. I think the odds of that is how we'll open are pretty small. But nonetheless, that's where we all want to be. Our lives are frankly a lot easier if we can do that. They're ever that easy. So just keep that in mind. We won't spend much time talking about column 4 at all. Let's go ahead and jump in. What do these different columns mean? So I want to start now with this red column here about distance learning 2.0. And I just want to point out a couple of key elements, and Brian touched on these a little bit, but I think they bear repeating. So first of all, this model will include significant synchronous and asynchronous learning activities. Those are fancy words for basically, synchronous means in real time, meaning students need to log in at a certain time to meet virtually with their teacher and their peers. This did not happen with regularity in the distance learning that we did this spring, and partly that was just because we had to scramble so quickly to get everything up and going. We've heard loud and clear from students, families, staff that will be something that is needed if we're going to be successful. I will tell you that every model that we're considering right now or looking at for secondary involves getting kids back to a quote unquote normal schedule, even if we're not in column 3 and 4. What does that mean? It means that we would ask kids to meet with their teacher during their regularly scheduled time. In other words, if it's second period, that's at Dixon High School, that class starts at about 9:30. The student would need to log in at 9:30 and meet with his teacher. We feel like that'll increase accountability for all parties and really provide some structure and normalcy for our students in what we know is a very abnormal experience. But we also know that we're not going to be able to just do that. And so kids will also be called upon to do asynchronous work, which is similar to what they've done in the past with distance learning, meaning think of it almost as regular homework. They can do it whenever they want to when they get home from school. They can do it at 4 o'clock or they can do it at 10 o'clock. So a blend of those synchronous and asynchronous activities will be a big part of distance learning 2.0, with everything really hinging around that synchronous work. What students and parents can expect as a result is much more face time with their teachers. And I put that in quotes, obviously, but more time with their teacher, approximating a sort of more typical normal experience. As Brian mentioned, grade level standards remain in effect. We'll continue to provide technology support. We know that there are some families that struggle with the connectivity piece. We've got the hardware, computers we have for kids ready to go. We know, and we have some wireless network devices for families who might need those, and we can get more if we need to. This other piece is higher accountability for students and for staff. We need to get better at what we're doing. Staff knows that, students know that, and everybody, I'm not saying that staff didn't work really diligently last time to make it work, but with this time that we've had to prepare and get ready, we need to get better at this, and we will be. And then finally, I know this was a big question at the beginning of this, and as we talked about from the beginning, when grades and assessments are back, we got a pass essentially from our university friends last time on grades, and that really felt like the right decision at the time. But moving forward, we know we need to have grades come back and assessments come back. So those will be in place unless we're told they won't be, but that's the plan as of now. So as we think about, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, sort of questions that you can tell us about distance learning 2.0. You know, one of the things that's come up quite a bit is, you know, how do we empower parents to help us do this better? What training do parents need? What support do they need to be more successful? So that's just something for us to be thinking about. Okay, so this next set of columns here, 2A and 2B, this sort of cream colored columns. Sorry, I have a 3-year-old pounding on the door. So these, This middle column here is really if we come back in a hybrid or limited model. And this is probably the space where we have the most questions um, as to how we'll return for the board to consider, should this be the area that we choose to go. But first of all, if we were in the hybrid model, of course, we would have all of these or many safety things to consider. You know, things like masks may be worn, you know, decisions to be made there, frequent hand washing. And this part, I think, from my chair is one of the most important ones, is, you know, socially distanced classrooms, which would reduce collaborative work and other peer-to-peer activities. So while that may be wholly appropriate for purposes of keeping kids safe, you know, we've come a long way as a profession as far as getting kids to do engaging collaborative work, engaging projects. And frankly, some of those things we're not going to be able to do in all likelihood because we have to keep kids away from each other, or we'll have to find new ways to do that is maybe a better way to put it. And onto this next sort of set of pieces here, we're considering a number of different schedules in our models. Should we go in a hybrid format? Each number has pros and cons to consider. I will tell you that we are looking at, there's a wider variety of models to consider at the elementary level. Again, at the secondary level, we really are trying to get kids to their classes when they should be in their classes. As I said before, to create that sense of normalcy for our students. Students in this model, even though they are able to come to school, they will still be expected to do work at home in a distance learning format. Again, in a best case scenario in a hybrid model, a student's only going to be on campus for half the time that they typically would be. Certainly not enough time to do everything that we would normally do. So they're going to have to do some work in distance learning format as well. We'll still be able to offer our supports in places like ELD, intervention, special education, etc. And again, as Brian mentioned, we're still required to get that 240 minutes. So that blend piece that I just referred to. So one really important thing for our parents to help us consider, or a couple actually. One is this. When I presented to the board a couple of weeks ago, we were operating from the assumption that it was really, really important to our community that our elementary hybrid schedule matches our secondary hybrid schedule really, really closely. We've had some feedback that that is actually not as important a consideration, or should not be as important a consideration that we had assumed. So one thing to consider is, you know, if you've got students that are not in the secondary system, they're not at C.A. Jacobs Dixon High School, Main Prairie, but they're at one of our elementaries, how important is it that your elementary student and your high school student or your middle school student have to go to school during the same time? Is kind of a key question for us to think about. An elementary question, that's why it says for elementary, we're looking at different models there. One where we can actually get kids touches every single day. If we do that, it means that it would be separated from our secondary system. It really is kind of a repeat of that question. And then finally, this last question. So if not attending school daily, and again, we're not looking at a secondary model where students would be attending school daily in a hybrid model, would you rather your child's days be clustered together or separated? So for example, if your kid's coming to school 2 days a week, we could do it where they're there Monday and Tuesday, and then the rest of the week they're doing distance learning. Or we could have them be there Monday and say Wednesday, and the rest of the week they're doing distance learning. We can cluster them, we can keep them apart. There's pros and cons to each of those, as I mentioned. So just something for us to consider. And then finally, this green column is a little more self-explanatory. That is, kids come back to school, they go to their regular classes, they do their thing, but with all those safety measures in place. Again, I think it's worth saying that in the green column, yes, kids are at school, but no, school does not look exactly the same as it has in the past. Again, there's social distancing going on. Extracurriculars are very limited. Things like assemblies, rallies, dances would not be happening in green. So school would feel same in that everyone's there, but very different in the fact that we've got some protocols in place to ensure that safety. And as I mentioned before, blue is everybody back. So we'll explore the hybrid models and especially more with the board on Thursday, but just to kind of give a general sense of what kind of different scenarios that we're thinking about and planning for.
Harvey? I'll have Mark, thanks Nick, I'll have Mark take over some of the conversation now related to the safety issues. Mr. Monticello.
Give me just a second to set stuff up. Good evening, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. I truly appreciate seeing 248 people out there. I know this is a very important topic, and I'll go through the safety pieces and a little bit of the IT pieces for schools. I tried to keep people muted during this. As Brian said, things have changed lately. If you were to ask me, 25 days ago what I thought would happen, it would be completely different than what I thought today. So just so you know, every day I hit the public health dashboard and we are at 122 cases. So that means between Friday and today, we went up 6 cases, which is a little bit better than we were doing, I would say 7 to 15 days ago, where we were jumping somewhere between 10 and 19. So I'll talk about personal protective equipment. So while we have not made any decisions fully yet, and the board will do that on Thursday, between CDC, the federal group, CDE, the state California Department of Education, Solano County Office of Education, Solano Public Health, and the state itself have all asked that we use cloth face masks or face shields. I truly understand this was a little bit different conversation with our elementary group. With some of our younger kids, face masks and or face shields might be a problem. But with our older kids, my hope is that we can circumvent that problem. I am in the process of working with one of our vendors, Centos, who will provide us cloth masks, and they will be laundering them. So they'll bring them back after using the right soap and the right temperature, and then sterilizing and bring them back in sterile pouches, so that our staff and students will always have face masks. So we don't have to worry about somebody losing a mask on the way to school or during the day. There are plenty of masks to go around for that. The other piece that we're doing is each classroom will have right near the door a hands-free antibacterial soap dispenser with at least a 60% alcohol-based soap. If you've been in any of our classrooms in the last couple of years, we have had antibacterial soap with no alcohol. It's been alcohol-free for quite a while, but that is changing to meet the needs of current guidelines from the government agencies that we work with. And then each classroom will have an ample supply of tissues, paper towels, hand soap, if there is a sink in there, both the antibacterial soap and disinfectant wipes. So that is the PPE portion of today. I will talk briefly about preventative measures. So we have purchased whole room foggers for if and when we get a classroom with somebody who is identified positively with COVID. This will be a device that sits in the classroom. We put the disinfectant in that, and then it will clean the classroom for 40 minutes, another 40 minutes while it dissipates, then we'll go on and move to the next classroom. We will also be cleaning each classrooms every day, which we have been doing for as long as I've been at the district. But the difference is after the cleaning, we will be using a disinfectant electrostatic handheld device to disinfect all the rooms before the next set of students come in. Restrooms will be cleaned and disinfected twice daily if we are in full day schedules. We are also talking about how we monitor restrooms and what we need to do to make sure a bunch of kids don't congregate there and spend way too much time. We will have portable hands-free washing stations located throughout the campuses. The big difference for most of us will be we will have multiple entrances, typically assigned by grade level or by location of your first period class that you will enter the campus on. I'll be working with principals over the next few weeks about drawing arrows so we can control the flow of students between periods and the flow of students in the class, so we don't end up with a bunch of kids trying to get in and out of the door right next to each other. We will be purchasing signage. We just finished the purchase order for Solano County Office of Education print shop so that we can have plenty of information on the campus about how to wear masks, social distancing, and wash your hands effectively and efficiently all day. If, and this is a big if we come back in full mode, we will have plexiglass barriers in classrooms where we can't achieve 6-foot social distancing. So this would be almost every middle school and high school class. So if we have a class with all the students in it at one time, the class rows would be set up. We would have 6 students in a row, 6 rows in a classroom, and on the right side of the desk would be a plexiglass barrier, and between you and the desk in front of you would be a second plexiglass barrier. The next row over would have plexiglass all the way down. We would need about 17 sheets of plexiglass in order to make that happen. So if we don't come back with every student in the class, obviously we can achieve social distancing a whole lot easier. We'll still have plexiglass between you and the student in front of you or behind you as we move forward. We will identify a classroom on the campus that will be used for any student or staff who feels they have COVID symptoms and until they can be picked up or removed from the campus. So those are some of the pieces that we've put in place. I check daily because this changes quite often. We reference not only CDC, but the state and the county Office of Education to build a large spreadsheet that I'm working on about the pieces we need to make sure everybody is safe at school, both staff and students. I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we will open this up if Brian is still there.
Yes, Brian is still here. And so again, use the raise hand function under the participants if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment. It's very likely to get backed up a number of people. So just hang in there and be patient. And we do run down the list in order of how the hands go up. So Mark will call out the names, and please, again, if you have the tab open to look at the participants, you can see as you're getting close, and be ready to unmute yourself. So, all right, Mark, take it away, sir.
I have Alicia up first. Alicia, are you there?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I unmute. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this and inform us. I did have a question though. For new students that will be a freshman this year, typically there is an orientation, maybe areas would be for a high school student that's already there. We've personally, there's several of us that have had children at Dixon Montessori that we haven't received any notifications or anything for new students. So will that be addressed, and can we get that information? If the website for the district is not super user friendly, in my personal opinion, I've had a difficult time finding information on there.
Yeah, thank you for the question and the feedback as well. So I know Mark had this question a little bit on Thursday night, and we'll be rolling over from the 1920 school year into the 2021, and then everybody who has registered for this school year here coming will be in the system and start to get the communications. We met with Dixon Montessori today just on some coordination around this whole situation, and I'll talk with Ben tomorrow. Ben Ernest is the director at Montessori and make sure that we've got the loops closed with you folks. So, and what you can imagine is if we are, what orientation will look like will depend on what model we're in, right? And if it is a hybrid approach, we can try to do small group orientation for folks, especially newcomers to the district would be important. And if we're in a full distance learning, then I think we would be doing something along those lines of the online orientations that I know some colleges are having to perform right now as well. So we will get you connected with the information, and stay tuned for the orientation information.
I have John up next, please.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll try to keep this brief, but I know Mr. Giramonte was saying that if we do go back to school in those middle categories, and it seems pretty evident that we're not going to be going back to school with no restrictions, and it doesn't sound like we're going to be going back to school with some restrictions full time. There's going to be some kind of a hybrid. So I'm wondering, if we do go back, Mr. Giramonte said there would be a significant amount of asynchronous as well as synchronous learning. Why wouldn't we go back to work? And I know you said there's going to be attendance required and there's going to be at least 100 or 240 minutes. Why wouldn't we just go back to school and have lectures all day and have the kids attend class? The first class is at 8:05, second class is at 9:10, whatever it may be, and have the kids attending classes throughout the day. And, again, Mr. Giramonte indicated something about, they would have the opportunity to meet with the teacher. I'm not sure what that means, other than, the teacher says something, here's a lesson plan, whatever it may be, or read chapter 10 or whatever. Why wouldn't we go to a fairly strict program where the kids are literally in class throughout the day, and then they can do their homework in the afternoon and at night, and whatever the case may be, just like they would normally.
You don't mean in person, you mean online.
Right.
Nick, you wanna take that one first?
Sure. Just to clarify, are you referring to the distance learning or the hybrid model, or both?
Right, or whatever the case may be. Whatever portion of the day we're engaged in distance learning, it would be more beneficial for the kids to have that schedule. They're in class, they've got 6 classes during the day, and they get out at 3:07 or whatever it is ordinarily.
Yeah. So with regard to distance learning, one of the experiences that we had is that when trying to do Zoom or Google Meet or whatever online form with 30 plus kids is a real challenge, and it prevents us from really doing anything but that straight lecture model, which is really what we're moving away from typically in education. It doesn't mean that won't be part of a student's sort of experience, is to have that lecture piece, but we're hoping is that by having a smaller cohort in distance learning model, even if it's still online, that teachers can provide more one-on-one or small group instruction, that they can group kids into groups, do the breakout room options, for example. But what we're trying to do is just that as much as possible, is create that a schedule that families and kids can rely on. Certainly we could do it every day through distance learning, and it's a good question. We would not be able to do that every day in the hybrid model, though, because of the fact that we can only have 50% of the kids in front of us, and teachers can't. Yeah, I think probably my response here makes sense. Does that make sense for you?
Well, it does, but I mean, and I don't want to bring up old wounds here, but we attended that meeting back in whatever it was, April, when we talked about the grading system, and I'm really pleased to hear that we are going to go back to the grading system. But a couple of words resonate with me ever since that meeting, and I heard the board talking about it being messy and difficult, and believe me, I've been a supporter of this district for many years, and we've raised 3 kids in this district. We love this town and the community and the school district, but those words really stuck with me. And when we talk about meeting a challenge or responding to a challenge, if we're going to look at this situation as being messy and difficult and just throwing up our hands and saying, well, let's just do this, and I'm not suggesting that's what we're doing, but I'm a little bit fearful of when we say, well, that just can't happen. I'm not sure why not. You know, why can't we say, look, you know, certain days we have kids in class, and then you know, the other days the teachers do lessons throughout the day, and it may even be, you know, whatever classes from 8:10 to 9:05, and they could say, look, you know, work on these problems, but they're still technically in school when they're engaged in the distance learning.
Do you need to go to bed? Come on, let's go.
That's not me. Anyway, I don't know if everybody can hear me still.
We got you.
We
Okay.
can. We can.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
So, I mean, you know, again, and I know, believe me, I understand that this is such a challenge. It really, you know, again, we've never faced this, I know, but I would think we can figure out a way to have the kids engaged as much as possible and have as much structure as possible, rather than just, well, we're going to meet with the teachers today if you have a question, or quote office or whatever it may be, you know.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we're sorry to interrupt you. I think we're saying some of the same thing. It's just a matter of how much time, but there needs to be, and you know, Stephanie Marquez, the principal at Dixon High School, I think has spoken most elegantly on this, that kids need that sense of normalcy of my 0 period class starts at 7:30. That's when I'm in either there physically in a hybrid model or when I'm plugging in to go. And it's just a question of how often can we do that with kids? And you know, to answer your question shortly, you know, could we do that with 100% of students in a distance learning model? We could. I think we're fearful that we'll lose kids along the way, and that by dividing kids into those cohorts, or dividing kids into cohorts, we have a better chance at reaching more kids. I know that may sound sort of counterintuitive, that less time is actually more engaging, but that's where our thinking has started. And again, that's like I said, that's something we could do in a distance learning. I can't tell you we can do that in a hybrid, because we can only have half the kids in front of us at a time at that point.
Yeah. And John, I'll thank you for your, you know, we're talking about all these different kind of models, and we haven't spent a bunch of time with that idea of follow the 6 or 7 period day, whether C.A. Jacobs, Dixon High School, or Main Prairie, right? Any of them. So you triggered a couple thoughts there for me, for sure, that we'll be following up on, and you know, put under consideration. Just a couple things there clicked with how you approach that. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who's up next, Mr. Monticello?
We have Tad up next.
Hi, Mark, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So I was wondering, are you still thinking about doing temperature screening or health checks for the students at the start of the school day if they arrive on campus?
So we're not going to do temperature checks. We had a specific conversation with Solano County Public Health, and not just for Dixon, but all the districts in that weekly meeting. And what Dr. Mateus conveyed to us was some information that even if you had positives walking in the door, you would only catch 2 to 5% of them through the temperature screening. The thermometers are inaccurate. More people are asymptomatic than symptomatic. And frankly, we could spend a huge amount of time doing screenings, doing temperature checks that would be an obstacle to kids being in class and getting the instructional time. The screening question is one that we're still working on. And, you know, I've had it everywhere from popping into Kaiser to pick up a prescription to, gosh, I'm trying to think of other places where I got asked the questions. Getting glasses at Costco, I guess, was another one. The 3 basic questions. Have you had symptoms? Have you been around anybody who's tested positive? So that 2 or 3 question approach is something that we're going to be considering. There's logistics certainly around trying to conduct that with every person who comes into the district every day. So let's call it, if it's a regular day and everybody's there, we're talking about 3,300 people, young and adult. So that's a big task to try to complete and to monitor any of that kind of data. Quite frankly, our biggest resource in terms of determining who should be at school are parents, guardians, and really monitoring at home closely. And then for us adults, doing it for ourselves. That said, tools at the campuses, we've got 28 new thermometers. We'll have separate spaces if there is suspicion of a case, all those types of things. But right now, no thermometers and no decision on what, if we do question screening, what that would look like, Ted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not quite sure who's going to come up next. It's the Moody Girls.
All right, Moody Girls.
Sorry for the name.
No.
With going back to school, like if we have the equipment to clean the rooms, is there the possibility of doing like half classes in the morning and a half in the afternoon so that
Yes.
they could get on campus?
Yeah, that there is an AM/PM model of the hybrid that, and we talked about this more extensively last week. I think it's probably a better fit for elementary than it is for secondary. But we did have conversation about AM/PM, where half the kids in the morning, half the kids in the afternoon, and then they could get to school 4 days a week, right? What we heard from those elementary families to a large degree was they wanted their child to get as much contact with the teacher over the course of the week as possible. And they saw that, again, not uniformly, but many of them saw that as the AM/PM model being the best way to do that. The AM/PM is less desirable in the secondary setting where students are enrolled in 6 or 7 periods. You have the period structure to work with there, so it would look a little bit differently. But yes, that is the kind of option we're considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Valerie Miner up next.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi, hey, hi everybody. Great to see all you parents and community members and board members and teachers. Okay, so I just wanted to comment a little bit on, I'm glad that you're taking the mental health of your staff, of course, and of the students, because I'm not going to mention my daughter's name, and if you know who she is, I'm going to trust that there'll be privacy here, but my daughter's very introverted, borderline antisocial tendencies, and she, online learning for her may work well for her academics, but for her social piece, it's actually making her more withdrawn. And she has anxiety of going to the grocery store, being around people. And I know this isn't necessarily a complete deciding factor, but I'm just putting it out there that, you know, it's very hard for all kids. They need that face-to-face contact. Online learning brings anxiety for her. She doesn't like to show her face. The breakout rooms make her petrified. Now, obviously, I'm here to encourage her and help her through this, but I'm just kind of putting this out on the, I don't know if anyone else had students that were going through this. So that is a real concern for me. On the other side, I understand there are lots of issues. And after what happened today with the governor, I appreciate all this discussion and I think it's wonderful, but I just don't see how any school is going to be able to go hybrid or anything right now with what happened today. But I mean, I hope that the hybrid models are going to be something that we're going to be able to do, at least have some sort of person-to-person contact with the students and their teachers. However, if we do go online, I would like, as a parent, I'm speaking completely as a parent right now. As a parent, I would like the parameters to know what are the parameters for going back to hybrid model or back to face-to-face learning. I don't want, I'm just telling you what I want. That doesn't mean I'm going to get it. I don't want, well, till October or till November or till December. I don't feel that's fair to jump that far ahead. I would like to hear, these are the parameters and guidelines that we are going to use to open up the schools at maybe the first level of hybrid, which was, I think it's the gold, the smallest level to like start back up again. I think that we should be looking at that instead of looking at a time frame, because who would have thought in June, by August, we would be in the spot. I mean, yes, they talked about a second wave, but I think a lot of us were like, this is gonna hopefully just die down or come out later after the kids start school. So I would like to request that as a parent. And then the last thing is, I've been taking notes. A friend of mine goes, her in Virginia, they're not pushing back the start date, but they're doing online the first week of school, just, and then they're going to go into person. So again, just some creative ideas. Let's not get stuck into like a semester or 3 months. Let's try to do something a little more versatile, which I know is hard for the teachers because that's lesson planning and switching and moving around, and it's a whole new world. But I think that's, in my opinion, that's the area we need to go. And I just want to thank you so much for listening. And I appreciate you taking our safety and our children's safety and your staff into consideration. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Valerie. And you can nod your head if you mute. I just want to make sure I understand and then reiterate it. When you talked about if we were to start distance, I think you were saying transition into hybrid with the ultimate goal of in-person as soon as feasible. Is that what you were describing?
Yeah, yes. My main concern is I don't want, like, for instance, in August, they put Cal State colleges already on online for the whole semester.
Right. Yes. So here's what I would tell you is, this is both based on, I think, our own feeling and thinking about this, but also what we have heard from Solano County Public Health up to this point in time is that we have to be flexible and adaptable, right? If you open physically, being able to close quickly. Staying closed for as short a period of time as is scientifically required. And I'll also acknowledge the fact that all the decisions here are not based on science alone, right? They're not. They are also based on the practicalities of your availability of staff as they deal with their medical situations, the ability of parents to sustain a model, to be able to provide care for their kids at home, support for their kids at home. As I tried to say at the start, all these different interests are there. But what I can assure you is that we will not, if it were to come on Thursday night, that, whatever model, it would be, this will change. We don't know when, but this will change, right? We would have to adapt to the circumstances, right? No decision will happen, it'd have to happen over probably my dead body out here in A Street. We won't go that far, right?
No.
But we cannot make a semester-long decision, or we're going to be this way through December, because things will change. That's the one guarantee that we have. Okay?
I really appreciate that, because I'm telling you, I'm sharing with you that my daughter needs to have some sort of contact with her teachers, and I just don't think it's healthy for the kids. However, I also know there's a huge issue of teachers feeling safe, and I love all the teachers. I want them to feel safe. So again, I'm just speaking as a parent right now, and I appreciate your listening ear.
Great, thanks. Mark, who's up next?
Is this Shaquille next?
All right, Shaquille.
Everybody, and good evening, Superintendent Nolan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we sure can. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak and say a few words here. First of all, before the Governor Newsom address today, which I've been following very carefully, I might have kind of made a decision one way or the other. But I feel right now, speaking as a parent, and especially right now, where we have a student and a teacher in the same house, where the odds are kind of against us right now. It's a double whammy for a family like mine. And right now we seem to be fighting against the numbers game. I'm an analytics guy, and right now the numbers are just against us in terms of the way this is going. And I know yesterday you did not, we could have made another decision, but today, it is not looking good. However, I was very impressed with your second slide when you mentioned, and by the way, I am kind of leaning towards advocating for distance learning, but I was glad on your second slide where you said that the distance learning option is going to be available should the parent decide that their child is not safe in school. And I think that was very important. I had 20 notes for you, but that took one away, where because I didn't want to be forced to send a child to school when she's not comfortable coming to school.
Agreed.
I do appreciate you saying that. Now, what can I do? Okay, so I'm not willing to say I'm going to dump this and go distance learning. I'm willing as a parent to meet the daily attendance that is required for on our part. Connectivity and equipment is not an issue, so it's not an added burden that I'm going to be placing on the school district in any way. I do have some concerns, and I like the gentleman who actually had a slide on the precautions about before and after, but what is actually missing here, which is again why I'm going to advocate distant learning right now for my family, is there is no plan when a student is identified positive. I mean, how are you going to reach out to all the parents? How are you going to reach out to all the students who are infected? How are you going to disclose this? And then what are the next steps? Are we going to have another Zoom session, which is and you got to kind of factor in HIPAA here along the way, right? So,
right. Let me jump in. Let me jump in really quick right there and answer you. That all is assumed, all responsibility for that, all the procedures and practices assumed by Solano County Public Health. We to whatever degree we support their protocols and what they do, we do that, but we have no choice in what happens with a positive. They assume full control over the communication and whatever happens in terms of quarantining or any of those types of things.
Right. And now, I'm not talking about the child that's been quarantined, but I'm talking about the other child that were in the same vicinity or was in the classroom. That is my concern, is not knowing that information when my child comes back from school, and there could be a gap. There could be a time period where that critical information is missing, with a child returning from school. That's not on your slide. So I'm pretty sure.
If I can jump in just for a second, I absolutely agree. There could be a time between a student with symptoms and getting tested and getting a result. But again, as Brian said, we turn around and immediately contact Solano County Public Health, and we will work with them because I'm sure they're going to ask us for contact tracing. Who was with that student? Yeah, so there, yes, I didn't put that on the slide, but I will also tell you, our job is to try to mitigate as much risk as possible, but we can't eliminate it. And yeah, there could be a period of time when a student comes home thinking everything's fine, and then 2 days later they find out that a peer of theirs became COVID positive. Yes.
Right. So, and I know, Superintendent Dolan, that you won't decide anything till Thursday. But right now, as it stands in my family, I am totally advocating, even if you go to a hybrid model, for the parents like us to be given the option without being penalized in any way, should we opt to choose distance learning at the same time.
That is the plan. Yes. Okay. Who's next, Mark?
T. Audius.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, this is Tony Arias. I had a couple questions about, unfortunately, in the case that if somebody's found positive, for example, I know that you had mentioned that you had purchased some equipment. Is said equipment, for example, available at every site? And number two is, is there any specialized training that somebody has to go through to be able to utilize that equipment to make it work effectively?
The specialized classroom equipment we are purchasing 2 of, so we would move those from site to site. There would be some training to use that, but on the same premise, we would have an electrostatic disinfectant device, either handheld or backpack, at every school site. That does the same thing. It's just somebody has to do it instead of the fogger being in the room by itself. Does that make sense, Tony?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Next, Mark.
I have someone named iPhone.
Hi, that's me. Can you
Hello
hear me
there.
okay?
Yeah, we sure can. Thank you.
Hi. So my question is, I have a senior and she's completed pretty much all of her requirements. The only thing she has required now is the social studies portion and the English portion.
English, yeah.
And I'm like, that would sort of eliminate, if I did a distance learning type of thing, that would, you know, for you guys, it would take out the problem of a body in school. I don't know what that does financially. So that's kind of my question. Can I shift her over and because I had intended for her to try and take some college classes because she's an AP student, is that something that I could just take those 2 classes and give her classes at the college for that? Is there something for that?
Yeah, I don't want to get into without her transcript in front of us and all those types of things, and for her privacy. I think there are going to be a number of families for whom there are unique individual circumstances that will merit a conversation with counselors or administrators at the site to see, here's what makes the most sense. You know, we've had a number of students over years taking advantage of community college classes as a way to enhance what they're doing or prepare more extensively for their college time. And offices are not back open yet, but I would certainly see what we decide, see how that fits perhaps for her plans, your plans, and then get an email out to the counselor so you're in line there real quickly to see what can be worked out.
Okay, because the deadline for some of these colleges is like the first week of August.
Yeah.
I think. So we're talking like 2 weeks.
Right. And you may want to get the process started then just because of the timing. But see what we decide on Thursday and how that might fit. And you can contact the administrators are back before the counselors. So I'd probably start there.
Okay. One other suggestion that I have where
Sure.
I work, what we do is we have like a barcode scanner that we use our iPhone on. And I can't think of any kid that doesn't have an iPhone today, especially in high school. And we scan that and those questions, those health questions pop up and somehow it automatically sends that to our supervisors. So I don't know if you guys have something like that in place, but the kids could do that before they came to school and that would help you screen them and it wouldn't take the time at the school. That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Mark, who's next?
Rosemary.
Rosemary, please. You out there, Rosemary?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, I pretty much got the information. You could get to the next person.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Lala next.
Oh, this is your phone?
That looks like Tammy, not Lala. But,
It's not.
tell the girls hello from their old
Yeah,
friend.
it's not Lala. Sorry, my phone is still hooked up from when Lala was doing Zoom meetings, and I
You're
tried
good.
to ask one of my daughters how to change the name, and they're like, "You have to do it before you start." I didn't want to restart it, but my concern, I have several concerns. The dynamics of my family has changed, so for me, having 3 students at 3 different schools and having a different model possibly at each school, where I have one at elementary, one at junior high, and one at high school, with you saying that if a child, if the elementary school is doing half days and then the high school is doing say 2 days of instruction versus the half day type thing, and the junior high is doing that, and me now being a unexpected single parent, the juggling of where my kids are, who's getting my kids, and who's taking care of them while I work for the district and possibly will have to be there every day, is hard. That it's going to be different at each school, and I'm sure other people have these same circumstances where maybe someone is not stay-at-home parent or whatever, and they have these issues with how are these kids going to get to each place. the other problem I have is I am definitely probably an advocate for the distance learning, just because although my child's education is very important to me, it's not more important than their life. So the chance that I would have to take sending my kids to school and chancing the fact that, like you just said, one of them gets exposed, and then say 3 days go by and now they brought it home, and maybe they catch it and those kind of things. So the distance learning definitely is where I'm advocating towards, but also being the nurse at the school, where are the sick kids going? Are they just strictly coming to the nurse? So then what am I exposing myself to as the school nurse every single day? And how's that going to work, right? Like what is my, as a parent, the concern for me is as a parent, not as a nurse, right? Because I put myself in this job for that reason. But now being their only parent, I have, more, I don't know what the word is, but being a lot more cautious with myself for them. So what is that, if all those kids are then, all the sick kids then rely, they come to me, and then I bring that home to my kids, like, what does that look like?
Right. So a couple quick things, Tammy. First off, the sick kids won't be hanging around offices. Every room, I think Mark mentioned it, every site will have a separate space intended to in essence, until parent comes to quarantine a student if they're showing symptoms or anything of that nature. Two, we don't know, we might need additional staff to be able to actually provide the support, the health support for students on campus, students and staff on campuses, right? That's part of the consideration we've got going on. Bonita Knuckles, who is our district nurse, she is involved in regular meetings with all the other nursing staffs from within Solano County, and they're trying to adopt some common practices, some standards that they'll all adhere to. So, and Bonita has been participating with Mark and the two board members and some of the other staff in the weekly meeting that happens, planning the school safety things. So I don't have all the details there, but I'm just trying to heighten the fact that there is a lot of communication and coordination going on about what to do. The offices are the last place where people should be hanging around if they're not feeling well. The other piece I would touch on, if we were in the AB model, right, as opposed to the AM/PM, but if we were in the AB model, we would be working to ensure that let's say the three wonderful girls who live in your house and are not in college at this point in time, that if A was Monday and Wednesday, that all three of them would be on Monday, Wednesday, right? Regardless of the subject. So we would try to coordinate. We can search in our database by address, and you can try to coordinate there to minimize some of that disruption for parents. Of course, if we're on AM/PM for elementary as an example, then that becomes different. But we do have those kind of questions and concerns in mind, because you're not the only parent who has them by any means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Tell the girls hi.
I will.
Who's next, Mark?
Sherry is next.
Sherry.
Hi, I'm sorry. So I have a couple of questions because my child is, he has special needs. And I feel like he's been lost in this whole distance learning, and I'm really regretting. I feel like he's just regressing back, and I was wondering, how are they going to handle that with kids that have, needs or 504s or whatever, things like that. I feel like the distant learning, he usually has an aid and things like that, and I feel like he's just slipped through the cracks. And I'm sure you're going to address this hopefully with all the parents that have like children that have 504s or whatever, things like that. So that's my concern.
Yeah, thank you. And it's such an important one. I'm going to ask Kim Parrott to give you a first response here. Kim, again, is our Director of Special Education. So Kim, do you mind speaking to that question?
Obviously, if we do some type of a hybrid or distance learning, we're going to need to make adjustments to try to get as many of the kids as possible on their services. One of the things that I've been meeting with my staff off and on during the summer through emails, through Zoom meetings, and one of the things that we have talked about is, for instance, if a child has speech, we would probably continue to do that teletherapy so that they could get the direct instruction from their teachers rather than us interrupting that time. However, if they have occupational therapy, that's a more direct service, and we are probably going to have to pull them while they're at school so that the occupational therapist can work with them one-on-one. Resource program or the special day class, that's their assigned class. So if we're in a hybrid model, obviously that's a teacher that they're going to be working with. If they're receiving some type of resource support, we're looking at even hybrid that will be, meaning that on the days that the child is there, part of the time we would meet with them in person, other times it would be distance learning. So we've got a lot of different ideas about how we're going to go about maximizing the amount of in-person learning time that our student gets, not only with their teacher, but with any of the therapists that they have. And then also trying to get as close as we can, especially like with all their speech minutes or their OT minutes. If your child has any assessments that are coming up, we are also looking at having our psychologist, our OT, our speech therapist, schedule those assessments. If we do some type of a hybrid, schedule those on a day that it's a distance learning day for that child, so that we're not taking away from their in-person instruction. So we have an entire laundry list of ways that we can go about maximizing the child's service. Also, counseling is something to think about. I work very closely with Adrienne Lauder, who oversees our mental health clinicians. So our psychologists will be very busy trying to catch up assessments. So our mental health clinicians will be really taking on the brunt, as they normally do, of the counseling piece. So that's something we'll also be working with, for our students that maybe have counseling or have counseling needs. But as soon as we know what model we're going to do, what particular hybrid model, or are we doing distance learning, then we can pull together as a special ed team and look at how we can maximize the services that each child has. Obviously, if a child has, for instance, a one-on-one paraprofessional, that person would be available to them when they're in class, but that would be something that distance learning wise, possibly not needed. But our paraprofessionals are also going to run tutoring rooms so that our kids can, if they're doing distance learning, can check in with that paraprofessional and get extra help. So there's a lot of different ways that we're going to go about supporting the children, everything from maximizing the time with the teachers to utilizing some online intervention programs that we're in the process of finalizing which ones that we're going to have available that'll help us supplement their education, whether they're in school or on distance learning. But yes, we are working very hard trying to make sure that we can come as close as we can to meeting all the child's needs. I can tell you that IEP meetings are going to stay virtual, because regardless of how we come back to school, hybrid or distance learning or some type of a modified normal, I know one of the things we're looking at is minimizing the number of adults that are coming on and off the campus. And sometimes our IEP meetings can have upwards of 7 to 8 people. So we are going to probably stay with our IEPs on a distance learning format like we have been doing since March, and then providing the parents with the appropriate paperwork. Is there any specific question that maybe I didn't touch upon that you might have a question about?
Like, what if, like, say, some special needs kids have issues with the mask and stuff like that? Is there a way to, to address that? And also, like, if they have a side-by-side aid, will they have that same aid to be available for them? Because I really feel like this distant learning, they're just getting lost and they're not getting, the progress that other children are. So how's that going to work?
Okay, side-by-side paraprofessionals.
I'm going to jump in. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt. Sherry, I'm gonna encourage you to email or call Kim and talk about your specific concerns there. They are legitimate. You know, and I just say for other parents of students with disabilities here, we are seeing in some districts that they're doing a very limited hybrid model where students with IEPs who are provided specific services they're designing it to have those students come on campus in very small groups for some direct support at times. So those are the types of options that are on the table, as well as whatever happens virtually. But just as we're getting into something really pretty narrow with side-by-sides, I'll have you get a hold of Kim. And I'm looking, seeing we've got about 13 or 14 names in line here. And so we'll keep moving on. But please get a hold of Kim directly if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, next, Mark.
Regina next.
Regina.
Hi, everybody. I just want to first of all say thank you to the board, to Brian, Nick, and Mark, and all the hard work that you guys have been doing over the last months, basically.
Feels like years. Feels like years, Regina.
To try and figure everything out. I want you to know that we do appreciate you as a parent, as a teacher. I'm glad you guys are really, putting in the effort and trying to do the best for everybody. I just wanted to make a comment, like Mr. Geyer, he was talking about, he had some good points about wanting, students to have routines and schedules, but I didn't hear anyone talk about the fact that some families have multiple kids and having kids meeting at the same time sometimes just isn't feasible. So I just wanted to know that sometimes that would be the reason why you wouldn't have your kid meeting with a teacher at a specific time every day, because it would be difficult for families of several children. Thank you, Valerie, for making a comment about that. I mean, I'm very scared about returning to work, but at the same time, I miss my students, and I know my daughter needs it too. I would prefer probably the least amount of access, at least for my daughter, but I do know that she needs it. So I think her even going 1 day per week would definitely help with feeling like she's still connected to society at large. So I'm kind of on track with that, but I don't know if I want a lot of contact. Yeah. So that's all I was going to say.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Take care. Next, Mark.
Julie, please.
Hi there, everyone. Can you hear me?
And thank you, Julie.
Okay, thank you. I had a question regarding going back and the safety for the kids. I'm very impressed with your safety measures, but I'm concerned about junior high and high school when they're switching classes and the fact that will we be wiping desks down during that time also? Will they be doing that? What is the plan for that?
That is an excellent question. And while we've mapped out how they're going to get from room A to room B, either the student leaving will wipe down or the student coming in will wipe down. Otherwise, we can't throw enough bodies to disinfect ballpark at the high school, 30 classrooms in an appropriate amount of time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I understand because I'm a teacher in another district. So I'm trying to figure out how we're doing it also. So I do understand that.
The AM PM thing, I can wrap my head around easily, but for me to say I need, a half hour in between periods in order to have, 10 people run through and clean classrooms.
Right.
Yes. I'm fighting with that question, Julie. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to figure it out and just bringing it up there. One other thing that I wanted to mention was our district had a teacher forum where we invited parents. And one of the things that the parents kept telling us was that they wanted training for themselves, especially the elementary kids, so that they would be able to help their kids. And so I hope that's also in the plans to help the parents, offer them the information also so they can help their kids.
That's a huge, huge part of the puzzle. Yeah, we ask for parent support and we know full well, and this is an equity issue really, and we know that some don't have the background experience, time, other resources to really be able to support the same way. So yes, that is something we view as important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Maria next.
Hi.
Good
Can you
evening.
hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Perfect. So I have a junior. She still needs credits for her PE, which she does have tennis right now. They're supposed to be starting conditioning soon on the 20th, I believe. How is that part of the plan fits into any of these models, which
It's that you bring up an interesting topic, right? So PE minutes. So of all the course requirements in a child's education, physical education is the only one where the education code says it's got to be X number of minutes. It's 200 minutes every 10 days. And in high school, you're required to at least have the 9th grade year of PE. Everybody else is required to have it that 200 minutes. So those requirements are waived right now. And we're not sure exactly what that will look like when we get into this. My guess is some of, if not all of the PE, depending how we open, PE credits would be handled the way that they were in this first period of closure, where teachers are assigning activities for students to do. We're worried about sports also, and I'll speak to that in case anybody is out there wondering about that. If you follow it at all, you see the huge amount of time and expense that the professional leagues are currently engaged in trying to get those sports up and running. Obviously, we can't do anything like that. We're currently concerned, especially with the current trend going on, about the opportunity to offer fall sports. We don't know yet, right? But I think we have to tell people. And so the idea of credits for fall sports, and it could be the whole year, who knows? I mean, the Ivy League canceled all sports for fall, all of the intercollegiate sports that they have. So we're waiting to see if some more will come out of the California Interscholastic Federation. We have the opportunity as needed, and it would be probably pretty rare, especially if your daughter is a junior, to make modifications or waive certain graduation requirements, and especially if PE requirements are being waived to some degree at the state, it would be some flexibility. We know, look, with all due respect to PE or any of our other electives, right now our focus is on core instruction, right? English, math, science, and social science. The elective world is a rich one, and we want to make sure that we offer those arts and ag classes and languages and everything else, and especially for students who are trying to qualify for a CSU or UC 4-year admission when they're done. We have to figure out the way to work those. But we also know that we have to address the core first. And quite honestly, ceramics class is really difficult to do if you're in a virtual model, right? We did it, but it's not the same thing. So stay tuned for those types of issues around sports. And it could be that girls and boys tennis both happen in the spring, right? In a kind of a co-ed model. We've done that before, but stay tuned on both PE and sports for anybody who had a question there.
Thank you.
I have Stephanie up next.
Stephanie.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thank you for holding this meeting and taking our questions. The asynchronous worked really well for my junior last year. So that's my 2 cents. I've heard a lot about the school models as a school in whole. I'll have a 9th grader and a 12th grader next year. And they're going to need different types of learning rather than all the same, because the 9th grader, I would hope, would have more instruction. And so are you taking into consideration the grade level and how many units they need, or are we just supposed to, as parents, talk to you suggested the administrators and the counselor to
Mhm.
get specific learning needs met.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And certainly seniors are in a different place than ninth graders. And ninth graders are in a different place than sixth graders. One of the conversations we are having is about how we might be able to support our students who are in transition grades, right? So primarily, those are the little kids. So the kinders, TK and kinders, first time in school with us for many of them. The first graders who are moving from it's not a full day in kinder or TK, it's an extended day, but it's not a full day. But first graders moving to a full day model. And then sixth graders moving from elementary to middle, and ninth graders moving from middle to high. So we're concerned about those grade levels with the transitions that they have to make. So that's one of the pieces of conversation that we're having. Is there something that we can do to support those students making those shifts? We had an earlier parent say, we're going to be new to the district. We've been in Montessori, right? The same kind of issue there. So as we get our marching orders on Thursday night, we'll see what we can put together that will help address some of those needs, right? And the basic structure of the school won't shift for seniors as opposed to ninth graders. It can't really for a number of reasons I won't get into. But you also see that, a bunch of seniors who are credit ready are already in a 5-period day, and those who need more credits are still in that 6 or 7 perhaps. But one thing that we will explore is the idea that, the minimum is 4 classes a day in essence now, so 240 minutes. So might that create something different that we could do with our seniors potentially? So I think your points are well taken, and hopefully you get a sense of, we see that there are differences between the grade levels for sure.
So we're contacting the counselor once they come on?
So I'd wait, I think I'd wait and see what, let's see what our decision is. You're gonna get a lot of communication. Yes, you're gonna get, we're gonna put something in the mail Friday afternoon to everybody, letting them know what our decision is. And providing them with directions on how, if they want to opt into distance learning, how to do that. Everybody else, and we'll give a short period of time for people to make those responses to us, because we got to staff these things and plan the classes and all those elements. So you will see that communication should be in your inboxes electronically on Friday, snail mail on Saturday. Those will go out. And so hang off on any contact with anybody until you see what's there. And then what'll happen is the sites will start to communicate with all of you folks more directly about the particular design of how things will run for your students. So I'd wait to see some of that before you reach out, because initially people won't know the answer, right?
Okay. I mean, the last thing is, my vote is that the person coming in wipes down the desk so that they have control of what happens.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, Mark.
I have Rena up next.
Rena Santa Cruz.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can, thank you.
Yeah, I think you briefly touched on it, but I just had a quick question about certain electives and things that are a bit more hands-on, like ceramics, band, those types of things. Are there even going to be an option if it's distance learning? I mean,
yeah, so and thanks for the question and chance to clarify a little bit, right? So if you think about it, the most dangerous class offered in Dixon Unified School District in this context is band. Hands down, not even close. More dangerous than PE. And that is because kids have their instruments, and basically they are spraying their respiratory materials across the room, throughout the room during the time that they're playing. So we had a meeting this week with, no, that was the end of last week, with Mr. Russo on some potential options, and we'll be meeting with Mr. Colson here real quickly as well. Once we know what we're doing, so Stephanie Marquez and other admin staff at Dixon High School will be planning with their elective teachers, how do we make this work? some of these classes, if we're in hybrid, we're going to try to have those classes meet and just as often as we would have the other classes, the core classes meet. If we're in distance, it's a different animal, again, unfortunately, and we're talking more academic type work, probably. And again, how do you do that with ceramics? How do you do that with AgMech? How do you do that floriculture? Those are some of the challenges that we know we've got. And again, what I would say is we want to have a physical presence on campuses as soon as we safely can do that and make these problems go away, right? That's the ultimate goal. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mark, who's next?
I have Galaxy S10, which is a very odd name to me.
Yes, Galaxy, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can, thank you.
I think it might have just, my question might have just been answered, but my son did very well. And thank you guys very much for, last semester. But do we have the option, if he's doing okay with his core classes online, that the time when he does go to the high school, he can be in his welding class? I'd like for him to have some hands-on. How's that going to work? Do we have that option?
Yeah, I would like for him to have that as well. I think, we all would. So it remains, we need to know what our structure is going to be here before we can really make those determinations. But our goal is to provide kids with the full range of curriculum offerings that we possibly can, including those hands-on classes. So it has to be safe. That's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have Barbara next.
Hi there. I'm here on behalf of my sister and nephew, who's going to be a junior this year. He actually had a question regarding the enforcement. We were talking about the possible restrictions and stuff. As a high schooler, he is aware that there is that handful of kids going to congregate and meet before school, after school, even during class in the bathroom. So he was curious how we were going to handle that group of non-compliant kids.
Yeah, and we've got non-compliance every day on these campuses. Our health-related issues with things like vaping or smoking. As students make those bad choices or bring alcohol on campus. But we've never had the kind of issue that we have with the virus, right? So it's an entirely different game. So we're not using the term zero tolerance, but we're talking about a high level of enforcement, right? And that there will be plenty of coaching and education and support and encouragement for students, and hopefully rewards even for kids who can manage to do this. And the flip side is for students who don't manage to do what they're supposed to do, of working very, very closely with parents and making sure that we've got cooperation and support. Other pieces, again, depending how we open, do we need to hire additional staff to make this work? That factor is still on the table as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, can we take a quick comment from Stephanie Marquez?
Fine. Yes, we can. I hope she
Hi,
didn't hear me.
I am not turning on my camera because my hair is messy. But I did want to comment about the elective classes and the motivation of our teachers, beyond our teachers wanting to be safe in school. I have heard from all of our elective teachers over the summer that they are ready to do their job, distance learning or on campus, however it needs to be done. And a shout out to them from the spring. Mr. Colson is very creative in using different technologies to still teach music. Our drawing teachers are on board, our ag teachers are on board, and they love your kids and are ready to go.
Great, thank you, Steph, for
Thank you.
clarifying there. Yep.
Terry is up next.
Can you hear me?
We sure can, thank you.
Okay. I have a couple statements and then probably a question that I don't think has been brought up yet. One is, and I don't think you guys have determined this yet, but is the guidelines for what is considered teaching for 4 hours for the students each day. Because I know during the last quarter semester, my daughter was given, I'm giving this hour or 2 hours is open. If anybody needs help, you can sign up for a time and then I can meet you. And that was the only form of interaction that was given. And so I just want to make sure if the teaching of the 4 hours a day is actual teaching and not for just a time set aside that the teacher's available, but not actually teaching anything.
Yeah, good question. Let me clarify real quickly on that, right? So the anticipation is that students have direct contact with their teachers on a daily basis. That can be in person or electronically. We'll see how things play out in terms of if every class is every day or if it's an A and B approach with longer periods. That's something that some districts are doing. The difference that will be in place this year, it's required by the law, is that in essence, we'll have some form of kids following a bell schedule, right? And so it won't be this kind of wide open, join me in these 2 hour time window if you'd like to or need some help. So there will be that because there's the attendance component that we have to honor this year that we didn't have to do last year. The other piece that I said just left my brain because that's how things are flying these days. I'll see if I can remember it after you ask your other question.
So the other thing was my daughter is one of those kids transitioning from 5th grade into 6th grade. So they're going from a very different kind of school schedule where they had one teacher all day to 6 different teachers. And I just want to make sure that there's some sort of orientation or something that helps guide them through that, because I know it's going to be a difficult thing for them to transition through. And then the one thing that hasn't been brought up that I don't know if you guys are looking at, essential workers that are working, and our kids, my daughter's been in daycare the whole time because I'm an essential worker and I've had to be at work and I'm a single mom. And so I'm concerned at how we're gonna help the parents that are working. And if they are in daycare, I know the daycare, when she tried to do the Zoom, it was spotty and or the other kids were loud and she couldn't hear what was going on. And so she's at an age where she may be able to stay at home alone, but I'm not going to be there to be able to help her, obviously, because I'm going to be at work. Sure. So I'm just wondering if, and you probably won't have the answers tonight or anything, but I do want that as part of the discussion, that how can we help those parents who have kids who the parent will not be there during that time to be able to help them, and they are going to be working at night with them or on the weekends with them. Because I know one of the issues was the AR reading thing. She was supposed to read a book and take the questions. Well, when we went to do it, that's only available 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We couldn't do it because we were doing everything at night and on weekends. So I just want that to be put out there, and stuff need to be made available for those working people that want to keep everything up but are going to need to do it at nighttime or on the weekends to keep their child up to date.
Yeah, agreed. A real concern. Yeah, thanks, Terry.
Katie up next.
Hi, everyone. So I have some feedback and then a suggestion. So
I want to start by saying that I'm really impressed with Mark's safety measures. I think they're great. As a parent of a student who wants to return back to the classroom in person, it makes me feel a lot better. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. The check's in the mail too.
On the other side of things, I was a little bit disappointed with the proposed hybrid model, meaning there aren't enough specifics for me to get on board with the hybrid model. I feel like it's incredibly vague. I don't know what to expect in terms of how many days a week my child will be in class or how many hours, et cetera. So I hope that by the time it's presented to the board, some of those details are a little bit more available for the board to make a decision. So my suggestion is that, and I don't know how possible this is, so I really want to hear from teachers on this front, is kind of the make everyone happy hybrid. And I think this is along the lines of what John Geyer was saying, is that it would just be great if we could Zoom every class period lecture and make resources and assignments available and uploaded in Google Classroom for students to do distance learning. So those students who need to attend in person, who do better with in-person instruction, and then those students who really, where their families are opting them to do distance learning, they're all getting the same message. They're all getting the same lecture. They're all getting the same resources. And I think that solution really will help to address some of the equity issues in terms of equipment and internet access. Also, those kids with special needs would get that in-person instruction that they may need. And then I also think that those kids that are like exposed to COVID, let's say they're waiting on a test result to be negative before they return to class, then they would be able to do distance learning and hopefully not fall behind while they're waiting and staying at home. And then, if the worst case scenario happens where we just have a total shutdown, kids and parents would already know what to expect with distance learning. So that's kind of the model that I'm in favor of. And I think it addresses like the having a structured environment in terms of the school day being, periods 0 through 6, and they know when to log in or when to attend, and we go from there. But again, I don't know if this is feasible. I mean, this is just something that I was thinking about as I was hearing everyone's thoughts. So some comments on that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. Nick, do you want to take that real quick, please?
Sure. Yeah. With regard to the lack of detail there, we have much more detailed sort of models fleshed out. I just didn't want to go through all of those this evening. They're going to take a long time. We are going to go through those for the board on Thursday night for them to consider. So we're not going to ask folks to make a decision without that information.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Mark, who's next?
James, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Oh, okay. Hi, yeah, thank you. Hello, good evening.
Thank you.
I have a 12th grader, and I just wanted to know more about the plexiglass that you mentioned. Because like at the high school, the classes have like 30 students to a class. So does that mean that you'll have 30 individual plexiglasses installed for each student? Or how do you do it?
So if we can picture a row of 6 desks lined up one behind the other,
yes,
a 4-foot by 8-foot piece of plexiglass will be to the immediate right of that desk.
Oh, I see.
All the way down. And then a plexiglass shield will be in front of them to separate the person in front of them and the person behind them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the row next to this group on the right side, 2.5 sheets of 4x8 plexiglass, again with the sheets in between for front and back.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
But there's going to be gaps in it. It's not going to be sealed off.
The 4x8 sheets that run down the row will be together. And then the piece that's in front of the students will perpendicularly be attached to that at the front of their desk.
Okay.
So the gap next to them is open, but
Uh-huh.
there's a 4x8 sheet on that next desk.
Okay. All
Okay,
right. Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
I have Gary up next.
Gary.
Hello, everybody. I think you've answered some of my questions, but it brought up others. The first one was who's deciding? We have all these hybrid models. How's that decision? Because we're going to have to, we can't make that with the school board because we're going to have to make those decisions quickly sometimes, right? So is that going to rely on the site staff to close? Or
I'm not sure if you can you try explaining that again, Gary? I didn't quite catch the nature of the question.
So we have different colors and levels that we're presenting to the board on Thursday.
Yes.
And the purpose of the multicolors is so that we could say, okay, it's a green day and we're going to do everything, or it's a red day, we're going to do nothing.
This is not day by day, right? Okay. We would open in a model, and then as circumstances changed over time, we would phase forward into the less restrictive model, or we would phase backwards into the more restrictive model.
So is that only the school board that's going to make that decision?
Well, any of these decisions will come before the board, yes.
Okay, so what if we have to close because we are exposed to COVID at a site?
That can be done. The board could authorize me to say, given that kind of circumstance, we want you to issue an order to close, right?
Okay.
The board can hold an emergency meeting with no notice, in essence.
Right.
The board can also hold a special meeting with 24 hours notice. So there's flexibility for the board to be able to take action.
And county public health is involved.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So the other question I have is, what do the specific models of distance learning and stuff look like? You know, distance learning did not work well for us because we had to put it together in minutes, it seemed, and we were always rushing to try and get it working right. Nick pointed out that he had more detailed models of that. Is there a way we can look at those models before this board meeting? Because maybe we have some input. I mean, it's hard to make a decision if I'm going to do distance learning if I don't know what distance learning looks like with my kid.
No, I get it. And, we're going to do our best to get things out before the meeting on Thursday. And at the same time, using meetings like tonight to, honestly, the adherence to the regular 7-period bell schedule or 6-period at C.A. Jacobs, that caught some life in my brain tonight that it didn't have previously, right? So got to do some work on that one here in the next couple of days. And ultimately, what the board will be doing on Thursday is saying, here's your structure. Go put it together, right? The details then of what that will look like for parents and students, then we have to get out in the beginning forms, just so it shows a sense of time, daily time and structure. And then as things move forward, here's the requirements, here's how you're going to have to, and that second part of that comes from the sites, right? Because what happens at Dixon High will be different than what happens at Main Prairie, that will be different than what happens at C.A. Jacobs. So there has to be a lot of customability, if I just made up that word, forgive me, to make sure that we got sites doing it in the way that makes sense. So if it's 50% hybrid, pulling one of them out of thin air, 50% hybrid may have a different nature to it at Dixon. Well, it would have a different nature to it at Dixon High. There's a 7-period day than it would at C.A. Jacobs with a 6-period day. Okay?
Right. So the last thing I wanted to just point out is, we can. I like the idea that the parent just said, and I know that you and I have talked about this briefly, that even if we go to a distance learning, every time I run this in my head, it doesn't sound right. So I'm going to say it out loud and see if you can answer it. I think if we plan for a distance learning, we can even do a distance learning in the classroom. if we plan to be in the classroom, we can't do a distance learning model if we're planning to be in the classroom. It seems that we're likely, there's going to be a point where these schools close. So having the distance model be the model for our classrooms and away from the classrooms seems like the best prepared situation so that we have our kids educated best, safe, sound. You know, I'm also, you know, employees, as an employee, I'm, you know, worried about being in a situation where I could get contracted. I think that, you know, if we plan for distance learning, we can still do distance learning in the classroom. And since I know for a fact that we are highly likely going to be one-to-one on computers by the time school opens, that it would be great because every kid's going to be still sitting in front of their teachers with a computer, or they could be sitting at home in front of their teacher with their computer. So I just wanted to point out that I think the smart thing is to plan for distance learning. And I know that it's better for kids to be in the classroom, especially mine, because otherwise he's going to sleep if I'm at work trying to fix everybody. But I also think that if we do it right and we distance learn it right, it can be applied in the classroom or at home. We wouldn't be much of a change. It's just a location.
Yeah,
so
got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. All right, Mark, we've got looking 4 or 5, something like that, who are still first timers. So
John Marsh next.
Hi there, good evening.
Hi, John.
So I just have one kind of a point to make and then a couple concerns. So I'm active duty military. I just wanted to point out, so on Travis Air Force Base, airmen have to go through something called Airman Leadership School, which is a classroom schooling that is required to become an NCO. And just so you're aware, they have decided that Airman Leadership School will operate at half capacity and has been doing that for a while. And so meaning classes are no more than 8 people. They're doing temperature checks on a daily basis. So, you know, and this is with a group of people who are adults that have proven themselves to be reasonably good at following the rules about, you know, operating with masks or wearing whatever protective equipment is required of them. So, you know, just, I think this is a pretty challenging situation that you guys are going to be in, especially with a group of folks that are not necessarily very good at rule following. Now, question-wise, Ready Ride, is there at any point, are you guys going to have a representative from the city to talk about Ready Ride? It's the only public transportation option we have for getting kids to school. And so, you know, for folks like me, where periodically I have to be out of town and need to have that as an option, you know, are we going to have a representative from Ready Ride coming to talk to us about what implementation they are going to be putting in place? You know, I'm kind of concerned that if the bus driver, you know, has to pay attention to whether the kids are wearing their masks or not, in addition to drive the vehicle safely, that's a bit much. So, you know, is Ready Ride going to be a part of the conversation?
We've had, and John, I'll answer you. We've had one meeting with them. I have another one scheduled for this Friday, specifically timed for after our decision. So we are engaged in conversation with them. So Ready Ride is totally a function of the city of Dixon. We coordinate and collaborate, but ultimately what they decide. But we have had some preliminary conversation, and we'll be following up on Friday.
And the last thing I have is I'm hoping that you're going to tell me that I understood this incorrectly. So when you guys were talking about the quarantine room, and if somebody is, you know, showing symptomatic, you're going to take them off to a space until they can be picked up and taken away to be tested. What I got from that was that you are not going to alert other parents that a person was taken away to be tested until they come back with a positive result. So are you going to be letting us know that a member of our child's class was taken away for testing? I can tell you that in the military situation, if you go to public health and you get tested, they're going to send you home. And so testing, depending on what is available in terms of testing materials, can be up to 4 duty days, 4 business days to get results back. And so are we going to be waiting up to a week before parents are told that somebody was sent off to be tested? Or are we going to be told right away that, yes, someone was sent to be tested and, you know, you should go and possibly be tested as well?
Yeah, and what I would say is we will will finalize that protocol with public health once we know what we're doing. Obviously, if we were in a full distance model, the question's moot at this point in time. But we got the HIPAA concerns that we have to adhere to as well, and threading that needle. And I think it is some degree of threading the needle, because I'm with you. If I'm a parent, I would want to have that knowledge as well to know what I wanted to do for my child. But ultimately, we'll have to comply with what public health says and adhere to the HIPAA stuff. So I hear your concern. It's legit.
Right. Well, and absolutely, I wouldn't want you to tell me who it was. Like, I wouldn't want you to say, "Hey, this person was sent to be," but to say, "Hey, someone within your classroom, was tested," or something. I mean, that would be great. But thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have Michael up next. Michael, are you still there?
Hi, yes, I'm sorry. It's Courtney, Michael's wife. So I have a few questions. I know we all have completely different needs. It seems like most of us are kind of walking blindly here. But one thing that keeps on popping into my head, especially after John's 1 through 6 period option, was what I did when I was in middle school. We had block periods.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe not necessarily just the students are on a block period, but the teachers may be on a block period too. And after the surveys or the opt-in notices come through, I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot of bodies that you're not going to have to worry about that only wants online learning. And there are going to be some teachers that you have that are also going to not be able to do the classroom learning because they are going to be higher risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with some teachers, in a perfect world, the teachers not being able to do physical learning would just do online learning. But we know that's not going to work out because of what the teacher's able to teach and whatnot. But who knows with staffing and all. I just wanted to throw that one more idea out there to maybe not necessarily just do the students on different groups as their grade level, but also their need level. Mm-hmm. And so you have people that absolutely have to be there, that have the physical needs, and then you have people that need to be there for mental health, that have a higher needs base for personal, and then that might be a way to carry in the one-size-fits-all model. But I definitely agree that the online has to be figured out first. I think all parents are worried, and teachers, about the quality of the learning being lessened just because of availability and staffing, and no one can solve that problem. But I mean, I think we're all working our best toward the best result. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next, Mark.
I have someone named Guest.
Hello.
Hello there.
So I have a question. I'm talking on behalf of my sister. She's going to be entering as a junior, and I was wondering what help will be given to those who live in rural areas where there's no internet.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly will they be able to continue learning, but at the same, like, excuse me, sorry. Basically, what kind of help can be given to those families? Because we're advocating for distance learning, but at the same time, we don't have the wireless internet so that my sister is able to do her work, be able to be engaged in her learning. Yeah. That's my question.
Great, and thank you for calling on behalf of your sister, and I'm guessing you're a Dixon High grad yourself there, young lady, so thank you for taking care. And this gets to the heart of the equity issues that are part of this whole dynamic. And we do have wireless devices that operate off phone, wireless phone signals that are available. We handed out a number of those for this summer. And one of the things in the law that was not in what happened here the last school year is that we have to verify and ensure that kids have both devices and are connected. So there's some safeguards there that we'll be following to make sure that everybody actually does have access. So we're looking forward to being able to provide that insurance for folks. Okay. All right, Mark, who's next?
Kim.
Hello, it's me. I just realized I wanted to apologize to any special ed parents that we have in the room or kids with the high EPs. I was working with our elementary staff prior to this meeting starting, and the descriptor I gave to resource support was an elementary descriptor. All middle school and high school students actually have a curriculum support class that will be part of whatever distance learning rotation they have. So I just wanted to correct that. But again, anyone, please feel free to give me a call if you have any specific questions.
Great, thanks, Kim. Next, Mark.
Nikki, please.
Nikki, you there?
Sorry, I don't see her.
All right.
How about Jeanette?
Hi, I just wanted to thank all of you guys for putting together such a comprehensive plan, Mark. All the details you've gone into and shared with us about the safety issues really have helped make me feel a little bit better about going back. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I know that Mr. Geramanti has, more in-depth plans about the hybrid model, and I just wanted to chime in as a teacher at the high school. I saw that Vacaville voted on a plan last week, and I was kind of surprised that they were going to go, it looked like periods 1, 3, 5 on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then 2, 4, 6 on Thursdays and Fridays. And it appeared from what I saw that it was going to be full classes of those. So, at the high school, we have most classes at about 30 or so. And so I didn't know if in any of your models, you had models for the high school and middle school, half size classes with smaller classes, which kind of piggybacks onto what Mr. Marsh was saying at the at Travis. It sounded like having groups of 8.
That's our, Jeanette, that's our 50% model, is that it would be half the kids in a room at a time. The 25% model is it would be just a quarter of the kids, and then you'd be only on campus 1 day a week as opposed to 2 if you're in the 50% model. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, because I wasn't sure if it was 50% of the total kids on campus or it's going to be structured per class. So that's just, I'm hoping that's more the direction we're going. So
gotcha.
Okay,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
I have iPhone next.
Okay, sorry, this is Nikki Monk. I was on a different computer and I didn't have a microphone. Can you
Okay,
guys
hi,
hear me?
Nikki.
Hi. So I didn't really get to hear the last caller, so I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but the survey that you stated at the beginning of the call where 70 to 73% of the people were looking at some type of physical return, was that the survey for K through 12 or just this middle school, high school?
That was the whole district. And I did look, I was able to sort those by, we had those in grade level clusters. So TK2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And they were all at 70% or higher, except for the middle school group of parents. They were at about 67%. So there was less support for in-person just in that one grade level. High school level was the highest, up at about 75. And for whatever reason, middle school came in that much lower than the others.
Okay, well, and again, like you stated, that survey was done a few weeks ago, because based on the call tonight, it seems as though more people are for distance learning than physical returning, or some type of hybrid. So I'm just wondering, and I know that there's been issues with the Zoom too, and as Terry stated, you know, just a hard time, especially if parents are at work. I was wondering if there was, I mean, of course, you would have to do another survey and stuff, but I'm just wondering if there would be a way, if really, as of tonight, only half of the kids, and I'm talking about high school right now, were wanting to be on campus. Would there be a possibility that the teacher, we could live stream the classrooms where the kids who wanted to go to school could go every day, and the kids who wanted to do distance learning could just live stream the class at their, you know, option? But then that brings me to another question. If you commit, so I know you said that every parent has the option to always do distance learning. Right. And what happens if nothing changes within the model? Are the parents committed to distance learning the whole time until something changes? Because that could change the amount of kids that come to school. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And and that's a good question, Nikki. And we don't have that nailed down yet, right? And I would anticipate, you know, we're going to have flexibility in this, right? And I would also think that, you know, if school started tomorrow, some parents would say, I'm going to the distance learning program, even if we were in a hybrid. And then in a month, when things are, and let's say we're in the 25% hybrid, and in a month or 2 months, when things are more settled and less threatening than they are now, then we'd have some people say, no, I think I'm ready to have my kid get into some in-person time on campus, right? I think we have to be able to work with families and be adaptable throughout the course of the year. And again, how that spells out exactly, I don't know sitting here tonight. We'll see what our model tells us first off. We've been working on a lot of things, and some things we're holding off on until we know what we're really going to be dealing with, and that's one of those questions.
The last question I have is whether we are doing a hybrid or distance learning, are the teachers going to be in the classroom whether or not, whatever model we choose to use on Thursday, are the class teachers going to be in the classroom?
So we have expressed that as our desire to the leadership of the Teachers Association. We think it's the way that we can provide the best support to teachers. It's the way that we think the teachers will have the most resources available to them. You know, everything, when we're in a different model, we have responsibilities to negotiate some of those changes from a different, you know, from the differences from business as usual. But we feel pretty strongly on our side of things that, again, accounting for anybody's individual health issues or concerns, which we all have to do out in the workplaces, that we would like to have our staff on campus. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And John Dyer next.
Yeah, I just have a real quick question for Mr. Monticello. You've got a fairly elaborate system of plexiglass for protection for the teachers and the students. Is that plexiglass already in place, or has it at least been ordered? And if it hasn't been, will it be available for August 10th or whatever that is when we return to school?
That plexiglass has not been ordered and is available for whatever happens after Thursday night.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
He's got his calculations done, John. So at least he's not going around with a measuring tape Friday morning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have Liv up next.
Hi. I just wanted to follow up. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on the last woman's question about the live streaming in the classroom. Is that even a possibility? Has that been addressed?
We've had some conversation about it, right? There's you know, the technology part of it to figure out a little bit, but that is one of the ideas on the table. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I think that's a great idea, or a good possibility.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have Fernando up next.
Hi. Yes, I actually want to say thank you for all the work that you've all done with regards to trying to plan for this. But I guess one of the concerns that I have is, given the fact that a lot of the times the tests themselves can take up to 10 days if someone is affected. Therefore, we've lost so much time, and therefore others can also be infected as well. So that includes students and teachers. Now, is it possible that if there is an outbreak where the teachers who are teaching the different grade levels can actually be used as a pooled resource? And this is kind of building off, I believe it was Katie who mentioned something about doing like recording the sessions in advance. Is that something that would be considered with regard to the teachers who teach a specific course? They can get together and trade off different days where they could pre-record a lecture, so that that way it'd be available for the students to still continue learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a term called the flipped classroom that involves for regular times, that involves students instead of doing homework, watching the video presentation that their teacher puts together, and then doing the work during class time, as just as one real generalized example of how that can work. So yes, there are thoughts about using those kind of resources as well, of getting some stuff recorded and posted out there into the Google Classroom or whatever else to make that work. So yeah, we got a lot of people thinking of all the options, I do think, right? So yeah, you're on the right path.
All right, thanks.
You bet. We've got 2 hands up. They're both repeat customers, and I'm going to take those 2 and then call it an evening here. We're down about 153 participants left, and we appreciate you all hanging in there, but just these 2 last questions.
Okay. Lala's back.
Hi, so my question kind of got answered about if you're able to, so if I decide that I'm gonna put my kids in distance learning and then there's been no cases of COVID for 14 days and I say, okay, I feel safe enough to then send my kids back to school, is that a possibility? And my other part of that is, can I have, like, say, so Lala, I don't trust her to keep her mask on. I trust her to keep her mask on all day, but to not touch her face and to not do other things, I'm more concerned than, say, Ariana, who, sorry, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be using names, but
your kids,
anyway,
you
my
can say them if you want.
I'm sorry, my high schooler who's going to be in the 10th grade, I trust her more to wear her mask and not, you know, she could just, you know, she's older, she can be safer. Do I have the option to do distance learning with one and in-class instruction
Absolutely,
with another?
yeah.
Or
child by
thing?
child,
Okay.
child, based on their needs. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
then can you change it? Like, so, you
So
know,
we got to
say-
work out those details, because what we can't really handle is a constant shuffle of people in and out, right? And then
Yeah.
people may be saying, oh, I want to go back to my nice 4th grade classroom at Gretchen Higgins as an example, and then say, we filled that classroom.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a spot for you at Tremont instead, and then having those kind of issues, challenges of placement. So we'll see what our model is, and then we'll figure out those details from there, Tammy.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And our last question of the evening.
Here you go, Shaquille, all yours.
Thank you again, Superintendent Dolan. I would just like to finish off, if you could just recap what the Thursday meeting is going to be like.
Yes.
Would there be a forum for public comments also? Is it going to be a closed session where we can just see and not participate?
No,
You
so
can kind of shed some
yeah,
light into that.
I'll get it. So the first thing I would say, what's the meeting going to be like? It's going to be long. So find yourself a comfortable chair, whatever you need to do. It's going to be a lengthy meeting. The way we've got it structured is the administrative staff will be making presentations on the different components of this puzzle that we're trying to solve here. Any governing board meeting, so all that work happens in open session. Everyone will be able to watch that. We've got 500 spaces available in our Zoom account at this point in time. You know, we had 250 in this meeting at one point. So when I say sign up early, do sign up early, get yourself in there early. And yes, public comment is a given in a board meeting. So we'll be doing the same kind of thing of people raising their hand. We're also talking about a way that people might be able to email in their comment or question to try to streamline things a little bit. So yes, open meeting, full public participation. Come on down, but be ready for a long night.
Thank you. And it's the intent that a decision will be made.
Yes, we've been targeting July 16th for probably 2 months now.
Okay.
And I think there would have to be some unusual circumstance for the board not to adopt an approach, to adopt a plan. Okay.
Copy that, Nolan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, to the 146 of you left, thank you so much. You know, I knew that I would hear things in this that we hadn't thought about or hadn't clicked for us fully yet. Those were a variety of things. I know I saw 2 different board members in this meeting this evening, so they were able to hear your thoughts and questions as well. I think if you are able to join us on Thursday, you will see a very open, you know, kind of all cards on the table presentation and discussion. I don't know any one of us who's got our mind made up at this point in time the right way to do this. I think people are leaning, and obviously current circumstances out there change thinking pretty readily. And then when they change, they'll change thinking again. But we're really trying to do the best for our kids and our staff and all of you parents as well. We appreciate you being engaged with us. Again, we hope to see you Thursday night, but make yourselves comfortable as you join us, okay? Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it all. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.